There's mounting evidence the Chinese regime knew about the virus outbreak long before they alerted the public. Photos from a secret meeting in January obtained by NTD reveals more. The capital in China's northernmost province is said to lower the outbreak risk level for one district to low. But is the situation really under control? A local resident tells us more. Former Trump advisor and China-critic Steve Bannon facing a smear campaign from China state media. This after he says the Chinese regime is afraid of the truth. China is exploiting the market turmoil amid the pandemic and seeking to buy up Western companies. A latest U.S. bill is introduced to protect American companies against Chinese predatory investment. And a new effort in the U.S. to bring manufacturing back home from China. One congressman says he'll introduce a bill soon to help companies financially as they make the transition. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. NTD has obtained photos from inside the Chinese regime's internal epidemic prevention meeting on January 16th. It's further evidence that the regime concealed the outbreak from the rest of the world. The January 16th meeting occurred in Shijiazhuang, the capital of Hebei province. This image shows the timestamp 14:01:36, January 16, 2020. It was taken at the city's health system safety and novel coronavirus prevention and control meeting. After the meeting, the city set up a municipal health committee and 2 expert groups for medical treatment and disease control. It also designated a hospital for treatment of an unknown disease. One day before the meeting on January 15th, China's National Health Commission issued a special notice to provinces and municipalities on the diagnosis, treatment, and prevention of an unknown pneumonia caused by a novel coronavirus. The notice is labeled as Special Class, the highest classification, meaning it must be processed immediately. It outlines secret training on a novel coronavirus treatment program. It explains that some Wuhan hospitals had been finding cases of an unknown pneumonia since December 2019. The notice says the result of a scientific analysis showed it was a novel coronavirus. The notice goes on to outline detailed requirements for medical staff, including guidance on protective gear and how to reduce transmission risk inside hospitals. The Associated Press also reported that China's National Health Commission held a secret video conference on January 14th. Health officials stressed in the meeting the epidemic situation had become complex and severe, and the virus could spread abroad. On January 16th, the Hebei Province Health Commission forwarded the special case memo to city-level health commissions. The next day, the Shijiazhuang City Health Commission issued an urgent notice on the prevention of infectious diseases. It told health bureaus to focus their work on the prevention of such infectious diseases as influenza and unknown pneumonia. But it wasn't until 3 days later, on January 20th, that the Chinese regime publicly gave instructions on prevention and control for the first time. That night, an expert admitted for the first time there was human-to-human transmission. Now to China's northernmost province, Heilongjiang. According to Chinese state-run media, the outbreak risk level for the entire province will be classified as low, starting from May 7th. A notice from Heilongjiang Province's Command Group for Combating Epidemics said the risk level for one district in Harbin, the province's capital, will be downgraded from medium to low on May 6th. And all aspects of society should begin returning to normal, provided the virus situation can be kept under control. But can it be kept under control? Just 4 days before the notice was released, state-run media reported that certain restaurants in Harbin, like barbecues, had to close again to prevent people from gathering together in large groups. A date for reopening wasn't announced. And on April 30th, just 1 week ago, the same district in Harbin, which had the risk level downgraded, received a donation of about $660,000 worth of medicine, face masks, disinfectants, and other supplies. Local authorities said it's the biggest donation the district received since the outbreak began. They also said the district is in a critical period for epidemic prevention and control. A Harbin resident told us the situation is still serious and people only go out when necessary. And in Daqing, another city in the same province, a May 4th video shows residents in one residential area blocking an ambulance from entering. It was reportedly bringing one or more people from another residential area there for quarantine. And residents weren't happy. We interviewed a resident there. He said the prevention methods are still very strict. Medical experts had come to check the city. People are quarantined in hospitals, and some bus routes are canceled.
When entering and exiting the residential area, inspections are very strict. They check us one by one. It's really impacted our life. Some long-distance bus routes have stopped, short ones too. We have to register when we go out to shop. It's impossible to take care of daily tasks normally. Every day, life is hard.
Official U.S. trade data from May 6th shows American exports to China dropped 14.7% in the first quarter. Under the Phase 1 trade deal between the two countries, this year should have seen an increase of 82%. That's $194 billion in U.S. goods. Experts believe it's not easy for China to keep their side of the deal since the outbreak. A few days ago, President Trump said if they don't buy, we'll terminate the deal. Very simple. According to Nikkei Daily, the largest financial newspaper in the world, companies listed in the Chinese cities of Shanghai and Shenzhen saw their first quarter net profits fall by more than 50% this year. 70% of them lost money or saw lower profits due to the pandemic. The oil, auto, aviation, and retail industries were all impacted. China state-backed CCTV is running hit pieces on former Trump advisor and China-critic Steve Bannon. Like Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, he's talking about the potential lab origin of the virus, and he says the CCP is afraid of the truth.
China's propaganda arm CCTV has launched a smear campaign against former Trump advisor Steve Bannon. Bannon is a staunch China critic, and he says they're going after him because they're scared of his reach. In an interview on NTD Zooming In, Bannon said they can say all they want, but they'll be held accountable for the pandemic in the end.
It's not going to change anything. This is going to be adjudicated. They're going to be stripped of their assets. They're going to be stripped of their personal assets. The Chinese Communist Party is going to be stripped of its assets. Eventually, they're going to be put on trial, a Nuremberg-type trial in Wuhan for the biological Chernobyl that they released on people of Wuhan, Hubei province, China, and then the rest of the world.
Bannon said the Chinese are fed up with the CCP's lies, like how it covered up the virus by muzzling doctors like Li Wenliang. Now there are rumors of another whistleblower, this time from the Wuhan lab. Bannon couldn't confirm it, but he said the CCP should be worried about the people of China.
There are many, many, many good people in China that are outraged about what happened. They're outraged by the Chinese Communist Party suppressing information. They're outraged about Chinese Communist Party destroying evidence. They're outraged by what the Chinese Communist Party did and looked the other way and allowed Wuhan to be destroyed and the citizens of Wuhan to be destroyed.
While both Bannon and the Trump administration suspect a lab origin, Dr. Fauci says there's evidence showing the virus occurred naturally, in which case it would already have been in the wild to begin with.
Amid the virus crisis, China is exploiting market turmoil and trying to buy up Western companies. A new House bill is introduced to protect American industries against the Chinese regime's predatory investment.
China is bargain hunting in Europe, seeking to buy up companies as prices fall amid the virus crisis. And the U.S. is taking precautions to safeguard American companies and technologies. According to Bloomberg, there's more inquiries recently from Chinese investors seeking to buy in Europe. Many potential buyers are Chinese state-owned enterprises. In April, NATO Secretary General warned about the risks to key infrastructures.
And the fact that we will now most likely have an economic downturn make some allies more vulnerable for situations where critical infrastructure can be sold out.
In the U.S., Congressman Jim Banks on Tuesday introduced a bill to prevent China from making predatory investments in virus-hit American companies. Congressman Banks posted on Twitter, "We must ensure the CCP doesn't profit off a pandemic of their own making." The bill will put temporary restrictions on Beijing-linked investment in U.S. companies during the pandemic. It would require more cases to be reviewed by the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. CFIUS is a cross-agency committee to review foreign investment in the U.S. involving national security concerns. The bill would also prevent Beijing-backed companies from owning a majority share in U.S. companies deemed critical. According to a congressional report last year, investment in the U.S. is an important tool the Chinese regime uses to acquire U.S. technology. Chinese acquisition attempts frequently target cutting-edge technologies, like artificial intelligence and biotechnology.
First, through its Made in China 2025 plan, China is attempting to become the leader in high-tech industries. It is also prioritizing the takeover of foreign tech companies through the state-owned enterprises.
Recently, the European Union and some of its member states have tightened foreign investment rules. Last month, the UK government stopped the regime-linked Chinese company's attempt to take over a British microchip maker. India has also put more restriction on foreign investment to avoid Chinese takeover due to the pandemic.
A lawmaker takes steps to shift America's reliance on Chinese manufacturing. Congressman Mark Green told us he will introduce a bill this week to cover the cost of companies bringing their production home.
Congressman Mark Green of Tennessee is introducing a bill to help companies move their manufacturing from China to the U.S. The move comes as momentum builds for the country to decouple from the Chinese regime. Green says the bill means the government would cover the cost of companies moving manufacturing home from China, something known as immediate expensing. It would be paid for with money collected from U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports. The idea was recently endorsed by top White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow, who said it would be a very good thing for American companies. The pandemic has disrupted global supply chains. The Trump administration wants to cut its supply chain dependence on China. The Chinese regime's mishandling of the outbreak has jolted the United States and other countries into action. Japan has already begun paying its companies to move out of China. Green says his bill will be introduced by the end of the week.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is asking the UN to let Taiwan join the World Health Organization. He's also once again criticizing China for its lack of virus transparency. His comments come amid a verbal tug-of-war between him and officials from the Chinese Communist regime.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is showing support for Taiwan's entry into the World Health Organization.
Today, I want to call upon all nations, including those in Europe, to support Taiwan's participation as an observer at the World Health Assembly and in other relevant United Nations venues.
He extended the request to WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom. Many say Taiwan warned of human-to-human transmission before China. The island nation's success with containing the virus has sparked calls for them to join the WHO. This despite strong objections from Beijing. Chinese state media appears to have put a virtual bullseye on Pompeo's back, calling him a rumor monger and the enemy of mankind in recent days.
China could have prevented the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people worldwide. China could have spared the world descent into global economic malaise. They had a choice.
His comments on Wednesday come as part of an ongoing back and forth between him and the Chinese regime. Pompeo said on Sunday there's enormous evidence that the virus originated in a lab located in Wuhan, China. Days later on Wednesday, China's Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Hua Chunying responded.
他说有 enormous evidence, then show us.
She accused Pompeo of having no evidence and claimed U.S. officials had used inconsistent language to describe it. Hours later, Pompeo further criticized Beijing's handling of the virus. He was quickly asked by a reporter about his prior comment.
The reason I ask is because Army General Mark Milley said yesterday that we don't know if the virus emerged from the Wuhan lab.
Pompeo replied that he saw General Milley's statement as consistent with what the rest of the Trump administration has said, adding that the intelligence community is still figuring out precisely where the virus began. Referring to the pandemic, he said,
"This could happen again. These are the kinds of risks. This is why when I see people say, well, America is bullying the Chinese, we're demanding of them only what we demand of every nation."
He says the U.S. is simply asking China to be transparent, open, and a reliable partner.
President Trump's nominee for the Director of National Intelligence answering questions from senators about the greatest threat to the U.S. Representative John Ratcliffe says the intelligence he provides will not be impacted by outside influence.
Senate Intelligence Chairman Richard Burr said Tuesday he'll vote for President Trump's nominee for Director of National Intelligence, Representative John Ratcliffe. He wrote in a statement that Ratcliffe understands the challenges facing the intelligence community in the 21st century.
I mean, look at where we are with respect to COVID-19 and the role that China plays, the race to 5G, cybersecurity issues, all roads lead to China there.
Ratcliffe says he views China as the greatest threat to the U.S. He mentioned Chinese initiatives like the Belt and Road and Made in China 2025. He said China aims to replace the U.S. as the world's superpower.
We very clearly don't want an authoritarian regime like the Chinese Communist Party setting standards in the world marketplace. And so,
Ratcliffe told senators he wouldn't distort findings if he becomes Director of National Intelligence. When asked by Senator Susan Collins whether he would convey findings to Trump, even if he knew Trump disagreed with them, he said, of course.
I won't shade intelligence for anyone. If confirmed as DNI, one of the things that I've made clear to everyone is that I will deliver the unvarnished truth. It won't be shaded for anyone. What anyone wants the intelligence to reflect won't impact the intelligence that I deliver.
Ratcliffe was one of President Trump's advisors in January, during the impeachment against the president brought about by the House. President Trump nominated Ratcliffe previously for the position. His nomination was dropped after Democrats questioned his ability to be bipartisan.
It's nearly 2 weeks since the first U.S. state started reopening. We take a look at how they're doing. Data shows those that opened earliest had relatively flat or declining numbers of new virus cases over the past week, with the exception of Alabama. And the nation's hotspot, New York, continues to see decline. NTD's Melina Weiskup has more on the nation.
Georgia's peak in daily new cases, just over 900 cases per day, happened just days before reopening the state. And since their reopening over a week ago, their peak has not been topped.
A lot of them, Metro Atlanta, they got their lowest number of COVID patients in the hospital yesterday.
Along with Georgia, Alaska reopened on April 24th. Since reopening, the state has not seen an increase in daily cases. Another among the first to reopen, South Carolina. The state normally reporting between 1 and 200 cases per day, seeing one spike just 4 days after reopening. But now that number is back down at around 100 new cases per day. But Alabama, which reopened on April 30th, is seeing an increase in daily new cases over the past week. And New York, the hardest hit state, is still seeing daily new cases continue to decline.
While we're seeing that hospitalization rate go down, and you see the number of new cases going down, those number of new cases are still problematic.
The state had less than 600 new CCP virus cases yesterday, a number that used to be in the thousands. As the nation sees more hopeful signs, states are moving ahead with their reopening plans. Tennessee and Arkansas reopening barbershops and salons today. Similar businesses are set to reopen in Texas on Friday. Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
The White House coronavirus task force won't wind down anytime soon, President Trump said Wednesday, though its focus will switch to reopening the country.
President Trump hasn't set a date for disbanding the coronavirus task force, but he says its focus will shift to safely reopening the country. That means some members may be added or removed.
But we'll be adding some people to the task force, and there'll be more in the neighborhood probably of opening our country up, because our country has to get open again.
The task force was formed on January 29th and began delivering daily press briefings as the outbreak worsened around the middle of March. Millions of people have tuned in. Vice President Mike Pence said Tuesday that the team could be wound down by June, but the president has since reconsidered.
I had no idea how popular the task force is until actually yesterday. When I started talking about winding it down, I'd get calls from very respected people saying, I think it would be better to keep it going.
Trump says he's looking forward to closing it in the future, though, since that will mean its job is done.
Pharmaceutical giant Pfizer and German biotechnology company BioNTech have started human testing in the U.S. for an experimental virus vaccine.
The Joint Global Vaccine Development Program is called BNT162. The administration of doses to U.S. participants follows those given to participants in Germany last week. Pfizer chairman and CEO Albert Bourla touted the program's speedy progression from preclinical studies to human testing. But it's not the only potential CCP virus vaccine program this far advanced. In April, scientists at Oxford University in the UK started testing a possible vaccine on humans. The National Institutes of Health also started testing in humans, becoming the first to do so in March.
JetBlue is giving 100,000 healthcare workers round-trip flights for 2. It's to honor their work amid the CCP virus crisis. It's starting by giving flight certificates to 10,000 healthcare workers in New York City. Then it's giving 90,000 pairs of flight certificates to medical professionals across the U.S. The 90,000 will be selected from nominations from the public. People will get the chance to reward the healthcare heroes in their lives. JetBlue is calling the giveaway an opportunity to fly it forward. And a new study shows that around the world, at least 90,000 healthcare workers have been infected with the virus. But the real number might be much higher than that.
The International Council of Nurses says that at least 90,000 healthcare workers around the world are infected with the virus. The number may be up to twice as high as that. The virus has already killed 260 nurses worldwide. Mexican state crematoriums are so overwhelmed with the death toll that they are now operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. One crematorium operator said they are processing 3 times as many bodies as they would on a regular day. Mexico City has set up 2 free crematoriums for people affected by the CCP virus. A Dutch restaurant has come up with an idea on how to offer classy outdoor dining in the age of social distancing. Small glass cabins built for 2 or 3 people, creating intimate cocoons on a public patio. Waiters wear protection and use a long board to bring dishes into the glass cabins to ensure minimal physical contact. Rome's airport is the first one in Europe to use smart helmets to check the temperature of travelers. The helmets can screen passengers for virus symptoms from 22 feet away. A view of the scan is transmitted to the visor inside the helmet, so whoever is wearing it can see the full body scan.
The Department of Defense signs a $126 million contract with 3M for face masks. Starbucks says it will reopen 85% of their American stores by the end of the week, and more in business news.
The U.S. Department of Defense said Wednesday it signed a $126 million contract with industrial conglomerate 3M to produce 26 million face masks per month. 3M is expected to increase N95 face mask production by at least 312 million masks annually within the next 12 months. Starbucks said it will open 85% of its stores by the end of the week. The company looks to adapt its business for safety during the pandemic. The company will enhance its mobile app and create a more cashless experience. The coffee chain closed around 8,000 of its stores in the U.S. in March. By June, the company hopes to reopen over 90% of its stores. CVS reported strong quarterly results as customers raced to its stores to stockpile medication and essentials during the CCP virus pandemic. First quarter profit rose 41% compared to the same quarter last year. Total revenues jumped more than 8% to $66.8 billion, and sales increased 8%. Uber is laying off thousands of staffers. The company said Wednesday it's cutting about 4,000 full-time roles, about 14% of its staff. Uber's customer support and recruiting teams will be affected. The layoffs are in response to the reduced volume of ride requests and the company's hiring freeze.
Faced with gloomy prospects for tourism, one Michelin-starred chef in Spain is reinventing himself. He's starting a takeout and delivery service.
As chef at his Michelin-starred El Invernadero, lockdown has seriously impacted Rodrigo de la Calle. With restaurant shutters drawn across Madrid since March 14th, de la Calle decided to reinvent himself, starting a takeaway and delivery service. It's not the first time he's run into hardship.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, I have a lot of experience with these types of crises, and the advice I give everyone is that the most important thing is to have attitude, initiative, a good smile, and to ask for help from whoever can provide it. The important thing is to do something for society, rather than think that society has to do things for you.
His 26 employees are currently furloughed, and he'll take care of the whole business by himself, from cleaning vegetables to serving and packing orders. He's expecting to pack 300 portions between lunch and dinner per day, and is also waiting for government permission to offer a cooking service in customers' homes.
Here at China in Focus, we dedicate ourselves to bringing you truthful, unbiased reporting. Don't forget to subscribe for the latest updates, and see you tomorrow.